Sometimes pain doesn't come from being hated. It comes from being misunderstood. You tried to love deeply. You tried to listen, to heal, to hold space for others. But the world looked at you and said, "She's too emotional. He's too complicated." Maybe they're the narcissist. And suddenly, the heart that once carried light becomes a mirror for everyone else's shadows. Your empathy turns into a crime. Your sensitivity becomes a target. And you begin to wonder, am I really the problem? Pause here for a moment, because what's happening to you is not a breakdown. It's an awakening. Carl Jung once wrote, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Sometimes the soul must walk through the darkness of being misunderstood to remember its own light. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are not broken because you care too much. You are not insane because you're tired of pretending. You are simply entering the first stage of transformation, the stage where an empath's light becomes too bright for those still hiding from their own shadows. The truth is harsh. The world often fears what it cannot understand. And when your love threatens to expose their emptiness, they will twist your compassion into something selfish. They will call your truth manipulation. They will call your silence pride. They will call your sensitivity madness, but don't turn away. Because if you stay until the end of this video, you will understand something most people never do. That when an empath is called the narcissist, it is not a curse. It is a sign, the soul's signal that you are crossing a spiritual threshold. In the next moments, we will walk through this transformation step by step, from confusion to collapse to clarity, and finally, rebirth. Because here's the truth the world doesn't tell you. You were never the one causing pain. You were the one absorbing it. And now, your soul is asking to be free. If these words find you, don't leave. Because what comes next will help you see your suffering not as evidence of your failure, but as proof of your rare spiritual evolution. And if this message resonates with you, subscribe now, so you won't have to walk this awakening alone. There are many like you, and together, we are remembering who we truly are. There is a quiet paradox that every true empath must face. When they begin to awaken, when they stop chasing, stop explaining, stop begging to be understood, the world does not recognize it as healing. The world says, "You've changed. You've become cold. You only care about yourself now." And just like that, the story flips. The one who carried everyone's emotions is now accused of being emotionless. The one who was once wounded is now called manipulative. The healer becomes the one said to cause pain. Carl Jung called this the mechanism of projection. When people cannot bear the darkness within themselves, they cast it onto those who carry light. And the empath, with their purity of perception, becomes the mirror that reflects what others refuse to see. You did nothing wrong. You're simply becoming real. But truth has always frightened those who live behind masks. This world is addicted to polite lies, to smiling faces that hide exhaustion, to the words, "I'm fine," spoken through quiet despair, to conversations where no one truly listens. So when you start living honestly, you disturb that fragile illusion. You become the reminder that pretending has a cost. And instead of seeing your honesty as courage, they call it selfishness, they call it pride, they call it narcissism. But your light never changed. It only shone too close to their shadows. Empaths rarely fight back. They retreat, they fall silent. And within that silence, a new awareness begins to form. Maybe I no longer need to be understood. Silence becomes sanctuary, a sacred space between all the noise, where there's no need to justify, defend, or prove anything. Only presence, only truth. And slowly, the pain begins to soften. The accusations lose their weight. The heart stops bracing for impact. Then, something subtle happens. You start to see. You see that those who hurt you never truly saw you at all. They only saw their own fears reflected back at them. You see that their departure was not abandonment, but divine timing, creating the space your soul needed to return home. From that stillness, a new softness arises, not the kind that gets walked over, but a tenderness with wisdom. You still love, but you no longer rescue. You still care, but you know when to step back. And in that quiet strength, you cross a threshold few ever reach, the threshold of self-awareness and inner freedom. You no longer define yourself through their eyes, nor define them through their actions. You simply see. Every soul, even the ones who hurt you, is still learning how to love in the dark. When you realize this, the need to fight disappears. You simply exhale and understand that every wound is slowly turning into light. In the moment you think peace has finally returned, another voice begins to rise, this time from deep within the body itself. After the storms of the heart begin to quiet, a different kind of wave rises, one that doesn't come from emotion, but from the body itself. You're no longer being hurt by anyone. No one is shouting, no one is blaming you. And yet, your body feels heavy. You sleep longer but never wake rested. You eat less, yet your emotions weigh more. You look in the mirror and see someone older than the years you've lived. It isn't time that aged you. It's the years your soul spent carrying invisible tension and unspoken pain. Carl Jung once wrote, "The body is the mirror of the unconscious. What the soul refuses to acknowledge, the body will express." And it's true. The body always knows before the mind does. It feels the exhaustion of kindness forced too far, the ache of unspoken sorrow, the collapse that comes from smiling when your heart was breaking. You can hide your sadness from the world, but not from your own body. It remembers everything: the sleepless nights, the trembling breath of anxiety, the moments you swallowed your tears, the forgiveness you offered before you were ready. Each of these became an imprint, tiny carvings etched into your cells, into the memory of your being. And then, one day, the body says no more. It collapses, not from weakness but from wisdom, because breakdown is never betrayal. It's communication. It's the soul's way of saying, you don't have to be strong anymore. The back pain, the hormonal chaos, the migraines that come without warning. These are not random. They are language. The sacred alphabet of the soul written through the flesh. They are not punishment. They are signals, messages whispering, it's time to come home. Home to your breath, home to the present moment, home to the parts of yourself you left behind in your lifelong search for acceptance. You will realize something profound. The body never betrayed you. It has been the most loyal companion you've ever had. It simply refuses to let you keep living in a lie. It will stop you when the soul can no longer bear silence. It will slow you down so you can finally listen. And as you sit in that stillness, something unexpected happens. Peace begins to appear, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop fighting what is. Healing doesn't mean the pain is gone. Healing means the pain no longer makes you doubt your worth. It means you understand that even the exhaustion, the tears, the trembling, were never signs of weakness, but of how deeply alive you still are. When the body breaks, it is not destroying you. It is saving you. It is the soul speaking through flesh, doing what the mind was too afraid to do, forcing you to stop, to breathe, and to be real again. And in that silence, you hear it at last, the voice of your own soul, gentle but steady, whispering with infinite compassion. You made it this far. Now, let's return home. After the body has spoken, after the soul has listened, something begins to shift. Quietly, almost imperceptibly. You no longer feel the urge to explain yourself. You no longer chase to be understood. You begin to realize that peace does not always come with words. Silence no longer feels like absence. It feels like presence. Not the silence of retreat, but the silence of arrival. You are no longer reacting to every sting, no longer trying to fix what is broken in others, no longer needing anyone to say you are right. You simply see, and in seeing, you accept. Carl Jung once said, "The silence of consciousness is not emptiness, but the space where the true self is born." You begin to understand, This silence is not the loss of your voice, but the rediscovery of your soul's language. A language without defense or demand. A language spoken not through sound, but through stillness. You no longer need to say, "I'm fine," because even when you're not, you still feel at peace. You no longer hide your pain, because you see pain as part of living. You no longer fear solitude, because solitude is no longer empty. It is the sacred space where your essence can finally breathe. And in that stillness, a new kind of power arises. Not the power to fight, but the power to remain. When someone lies, you no longer tremble. When someone manipulates, you stay calm. When the world grows loud, you stay steady. It isn't numbness, it's clarity. The empath who has walked through the dark emerges into what Jung might call the quiet light. A light not blinding, but revealing. You start noticing meaning in the smallest things. A ray of sunlight across your hands, the rustle of leaves in the morning air, a breath that feels entirely your own. What once tore you apart now makes you smile softly. Not because you've forgotten, but because you no longer need to understand everything. You allow life to be as it is, imperfect, contradictory, fleeting, and whole. That is true rebirth. Not the creation of a new self, but the return to your original one. The self before fear, before expectation, before the need to prove your worth. And when you reach this point, the world around you quietly transforms. Genuine souls begin to appear. Conversations deepen. The ordinary becomes sacred. You cry not from pain, but from gratitude. Silence has taught you what words never could. That real strength is not control, but surrender. Letting things be what they are. Letting yourself be who you are. Within the silence, the soul stops trying to escape the pain. Instead, it begins to see what lies beneath it. A doorway. The passage to the deepest homecoming. The place where you no longer need to be saved because you have finally remembered who you are. After walking through the long corridors of darkness, the light doesn't return with thunder or applause. It arrives softly, like breath. A single beam slips through the cracks, touches you quietly, and you know something has changed. It's not the radiant light of blind hope, but a calm, steady glow. The kind of light that belongs to someone who has faced the abyss and no longer fears it. You start to see beauty in ordinary things. A cup of warm tea. A morning without noise. A slow breath that doesn't hurt. The things you once overlooked now feel sacred because you finally understand. Life was never hiding in the grand gestures. It was always here, in the quiet details you were too broken to notice. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." And you, the one who has walked through ruin, no longer dream of light because you have become it. Not the naive glow that seeks to be seen, but the gentle radiance born from inner peace. This is mature compassion. A kindness that no longer comes from the fear of being unloved, but from the fullness of finally understanding love itself. It doesn't rush to fix. It doesn't beg to be needed. It doesn't lose itself in saving others. It listens. It witnesses. It respects timing. You see that everyone is fighting their own shadow, so judgment fades away. You offer grace, but also boundaries. You love deeply, but without losing your shape. This is what compassion looks like when it has grown wise, when it no longer tries to please but to understand, when it gives, not to be recognized, but because there's no fear of loss left. You become softer, but not smaller. Your quiet presence becomes a mirror, not one that blinds, but one that helps others see themselves more clearly. Life begins to rearrange itself around you, not with noise or spectacle, but with alignment. The genuine arrive. The false drift away. You no longer chase what is right for you, because your energy itself calls it home. The light you carry now does not dazzle. It clarifies. It doesn't demand attention. It invites honesty. And those who once wounded you fall silent when they see you again, not out of fear, but out of reverence. For they can feel it now. the power of a soul that has learned to love without expectation. You no longer need to prove your goodness or defend your heart or correct the stories told about you. True light does not argue, it simply exists. And in its existence, it transforms everything around it. You finally understand. This journey was never about changing anyone else. It was always about becoming yourself, clear, kind, and steady like a candle that refuses to go out. Darkness still exists, but it no longer threatens you. Because now you know, without the night, your light would never have learned how to shine this softly. Sometimes you no longer fear losing anyone. You only fear losing yourself. After countless times trying to save others from their pain, you finally realize the one who needed saving was you. There is a truth every empath must learn through heartbreak. Love that forgets the self is not love. It is disappearance. You once believed love meant accepting everything, that if you were kind enough, they would finally understand you. But real love does not require proof. It does not demand endurance, and it does not turn you into a mirror for someone else's wounds. True love is not about saving someone. It is about growing in awareness together. The day you stop trying to play the hero is the day you begin to love from consciousness, not fear. Carl Jung once wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power. Where power predominates, love is lacking." You have seen this truth written into your scars. When love becomes control, when kindness becomes manipulation, when compassion becomes exhaustion, that is not love. That is fear disguised as affection. But after everything, you begin to love differently, not from emptiness, but from wholeness. You love because it is your nature, not because you hope to be loved back. You give, not to fill a void, but because you already are full. You understand now, if love makes you shrink, it is not love. If love silences your truth, it is not love. Real love sets you free, free to speak, free to be, free to walk away when your soul no longer feels respected. The awakened empath no longer uses the heart to endure, they use the heart to perceive. When they see pain in others, they don't rush to fix it. They stay, steady, silent, and luminous. Their presence alone becomes healing. Love no longer floods everything like a storm. It rests like a still lake, reflecting the sky with honesty. If someone comes, you smile. If they leave, you still smile. Not because you've grown cold, but because you understand. To love is not to hold, but to allow. And when you love in this way, the world grows quieter, but deeper. Shallow connections fade. True ones emerge, soft and genuine. You no longer chase love. You recognize it in the calmness of your breath, in the peace of being. Because now you know, you're love itself, and therefore, you can never lose it. You no longer crave to be understood. You understand yourself. You no longer fear the dark. You can sit within it without falling apart. And in that sacred stillness, light returns, not from outside, but from within. After all the storms, after the collapses and awakenings, you finally understand. This journey was never about fixing others, but about coming home to yourself. You are no longer the one who bends just to be accepted, no longer the empath who loses shape trying to understand everyone else, no longer the soul who confuses pain with proof of love. You move through life differently now, gentler but stronger. You no longer search for the light because the light has quietly begun to live inside you. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And now, that is where you stand, in the quiet center of your own being, where everything you once resisted has finally found a place to belong. You realize that wholeness is not perfection. It's the ability to hold both your light and your shadow without shame, without fear. You no longer hide your sensitivity. You honor it. You no longer apologize for your depth. You cherish it. Because you now know what the world called too much was always the exact measure of your soul's truth. You no longer fight to be strong. True strength has become tenderness. You no longer argue to be believed because you finally believe yourself. You no longer try to hold on to those who don't see you, because what is meant for you will never require you to shrink. Freedom is not the absence of attachment. It is the presence of authenticity. It's being able to stay without losing yourself, to love without fear, to let go without hate. The awakened empath understands now. Life is not a series of lessons to survive, but a sacred unfolding, a gradual remembering of who you've always been. And in that remembrance, a final light begins to rise, not the blinding light of achievement, but the calm radiance of truth. The light of someone who no longer needs to seek, because they have already found their way home. You don't need anyone to confirm your worth. Your existence is proof enough. You don't need to prove you are worthy of love. You are love, you are light, and you are enough, even in silence, even alone. This video was inspired by one of you, a soul who shared a story that touched my heart. I hope it brings light to anyone who needs it right now. If these words found you at the right time, share what you felt in the comments below. You never know who might find healing in your story. And if you're walking this path of awakening, remember to subscribe and stay with us here at Inner Psychology, where we continue exploring the deepest layers of the soul and gently return to the most authentic version of ourselves.